На трибунах аллеют знамена, облака в поднебесье плывут. На зеленом ковре стадиона разноцветные майки цветут.
Hello and welcome back to the Russian Football News Podcast. Due to the upcoming international break, there's been 2 rounds of RPL action since we last recorded, with the usual spate of games at the weekend immediately followed by an earlier midweek round from Wednesday to Friday. During this time, Russia boss Stani Cherchesov has also named his Russia squad for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers against Malta, Slovenia and Slovakia. We'll discuss that and answer all your questions sent in via Twitter and email, and to do so is Richard Pike.
Good morning, everybody. How are we all?
I'm good. Like I said, morning. We're recording a slightly different date here just to accommodate all of the fixture changes and schedule changes and new differences. We're also joined this week by Hanu.
Hi guys, great to be back on, and love the new time. It's the first time I've been on this podcast when I'm not half asleep. So, it's great to be on, great time, and I hope you guys are well.
Yeah, definitely. I thought we would accommodate some of yourself in the totally different time zones instead of just getting us 3 boring Englishmen with our boring English accents on to discuss Russian football every single week. Now, like I mentioned, we have had 2 game weeks since we last recorded, and in that time there's been quite a lot of change in the title race at the top of the RPL, with Zenit recording back-to-back wins, as well as Spartak, and a certain Lokomotiv has now actually leapfrogged CSKA into 3rd place. Now, Hanu, you've been quite complimentary of Marko Nikolic and his work he's done at Loko so far in the return from the winter break.
Yeah, I have, and I feel like my trust in Nikolic is finally being repaid because they've won all 5 of their games since the season restarted. It's been emphatic, all of their victories. They've been a very well-oiled club, and Nikolic deserves a great deal of credit for that because, well, he's tactically the team has looked formidable since the season restarted. He's managed to make Franco Acamano into a serious player who is on form, and he's playing very well. He's finally looking like the player they paid 5 million for, which is a massive boost for them. And then you've also got Fedor Smolov scoring goals, Adair got an assist, and at the moment it just looks like Pablo has looked phenomenal. He has looked so calming at the back. So yeah, there's a very good atmosphere around the club, and I feel like they've set themselves up to get at least Europe now, or they might even get the Champions League. I think the title might be too far off, but they've done very well, and I hope that Lokomotiv fans have begun to realize that he actually was a great signing and that Yuri Semin would not have been able to do this at his ripe old age.
No, definitely not. I think it's more so impressive as well that they've went on this run entirely without Anton Moranchuk, who's been still injured, and also without Dmitry Baranov. He has made his return, but has not started a game yet, and is just making the odd substitute appearance, basically just to build up some game time and match fitness. But what I really like about Nikolic is, look, Yuri Semin's a legendary manager, but a lot of what he did well with Loko was built upon the fact that he is a club legend and an unbelievably effective manager. Every single player in that squad just had the highest of and utmost of respect for Semin. Nikolic is doing all of this on tactical nous, and he understood that the way Lokomotiv were performing in the Champions League against far better sides was completely different to the way that they were being quite turgid with the possession style, not really being effective with the ball, passing around a lot on the penalty area and not penetrating enough. So he's totally changed it up. He's now playing like a 4-4-4-D with Maxim Mukin, Krychowiak and Kulikov usually in a 3 in midfield, with Rifat Zhamaletinov in the 10 role, and then Lysakovic and Kamano, as you said, basically just running at players up top, and they sit deep, soak up all the pressure, and then counter-attack at the highest of pace. And it really, really suits this Lokomotiv side, especially Lysakovic and Kamano up top. that switch from them two, from Adair and Smolov earlier in the season, has really changed their game. And I think Smolov's been very, very good as well since the break. But this style of football really suits Lokomotiv more. Richard, what do you think about Vitaly Lisakovic? Are you impressed by the Belarusian up top?
Yeah, he's impressed me a lot. And him and Kamano since the restart, like you said, James, have been excellent. I was a fan of Lisakovic before the winter break, and me and yourself as well, and probably a lot of us at RFN thought that he was not getting as many minutes as what he should get. I think Nikolic could have used him a bit more before the break, but to Nikolic's credit, he's now integrating him into the team, and we're seeing the rewards being reaped now from that. And yeah, I like to echo Hanu's thoughts. I've been very, very impressed with Lokomotiv in general since the break. They're getting a tune out of Kamano now, which is good because he was a good player. 2 years ago in France, he was being linked with the likes of Liverpool and Tottenham, if you believe the reports. So this guy obviously was a good player, and maybe it just took a little bit of time. Maybe we have to remember as well, when players move clubs, it sometimes takes them 4, 5, 6 months to get into the groove, adapt to the new surroundings, new tactics, new formation, new country sometimes as well. So, and he's starting to do that now, and he's been really impressive since the break. And yeah, like I said, I think now the ghost of Shumin has been laid to bed now. I think at the end of the day, I think Lokomotiv fans now are probably accepting now that whilst Yuri Shumin is a club legend and his success at Lokomotiv is brilliant, I think they had to move on eventually. They couldn't just keep bringing Shumin back time and time again, or eventually the succession question had to be answered sometime, and now it has been with Nikolic. And I like him tactically. You can tell with the way he's setting them up that this is good tactics, coaching, emphasis on throwing youth in there as well. He's thrown Daniel Kulikov and Maxim Mukin in midfield, and would Shumin have done that? I really applaud what Nikolic is doing at Lokomotiv, throwing more trust in Lisakovic as well. So yes, I'm really happy with the way he's trusting Lisakovic more now, getting the best out of Kamano. You can see there's a plan starting to emerge now at Lokomotiv, a vision to build something long term and productive. And I think Nikolic will stay there for a good few years and do that. And I actually think next year, I actually think that Lokomotiv will be a good bet to finish third and finish in the Europa League. And I think that would suit them because they were competitive in a couple of the Champions League games this year against Atletico Madrid, and in one of the games against Bayern and one of the games against Salzburg. So if you drop down to the Europa League, the level of opponent you play is less. So I think if they were to finish third and qualify for the Europa League, or finish third and win the Russian Cup, which is very much on, then I think the Europa League could be a good, suitable starting point for, well, not starting point, but a good suitable building point for Nikolic going forward, and it'll be against teams more to their level. So yeah, very impressed with Lisakovic, very impressed with Nikolic for playing him as well.
Yeah, certainly. I think Nikolic is a little bit of a rare managerial appointment in recent years in Russia. If I segue slightly on to the side that Lokomotiv leapfrogged, Siska have been widely reported to considering the future of a certain Viktor Goncharenko, and after absolutely bottle jobbing what could have been an interesting title race, getting destroyed off everybody in the league, particularly losing a massive game against Zenit 3-2. So in response to that, there's been rumours flying around that a certain Siska legend and current Croatian national team assistant manager Ivica Olic could actually take over from Goncharenko. And once again, rumours, but it is being rumoured, and it's all over Telegram, that is. He is currently flying to Moscow to replace Goncharenko, or at least join the setup there at Siska. Hanu, what's your thoughts on Russian clubs, or not just Russian clubs, but football clubs in general, proclivity to constantly sign club legends like Lokomotiv used to with Semen?
I despise it, to be fair. A large part of the blame for starting that trend goes to my own club, who signed Zinedine Zidane, and I've spoken about this before. And he succeeded greatly, but what people don't realize is that he spent years at the club before being signed. Made the permanent manager. In various capacities, And clubs these days have just decided that it would make sense for them to just sign really any former player they have with a coaching license. In Andrea Pirlo's case, no experience at all. And I mean, we've seen the Russian clubs that have signed actual managers. So Marko Nikolic is one of them. He's done pretty well. Domenico Tedesco is an actual manager. He's done fairly well. Sergei Semak had experience coaching at Ufa. He's done well at Zenit, so he wasn't a complete amateur when he came to Zenit. Then you've also got Sandro Schwartz, who's doing well. Leonid Slutsky, is a great manager. And then on the opposite side, you have not only a number of clubs in Europe that have failed after signing club legends. You've got the likes of Krasnodar, who've signed inexperienced managers, and Murad Musayev and are currently struggling. And Goncharenko, honestly, is a disappointment himself. There were heavy talks before the winter break that he was going to be sacked anyway and going to be, they would have a new manager in the spring. But then they beat Rostov 4-0 on the final day, and he was, his job was safe, which I felt was a very short-sighted decision. I feel like he should have been sacked anyway, and he's clearly shown that he's incapable of doing anything in the spring, and he even admitted to it when he went to Belarus for a short hiatus. And Ivica Olic, I mean, I don't know anything about his managerial career. Nobody really does, because he's been an assistant to Zlatko Dalic. Croatia very successful, obviously, on the international stage, but I mean, it doesn't fill me with confidence. It feels like a sidestep, and yeah, I'm not really too big of a fan of the move.
Yeah, me too. To be honest, if it does even happen, when you first mentioned that it was rumored it was happening, I was kind of just dumbstruck. I was like, what? I'd read literally just this morning that CSKA sources close to CSKA were claiming that Roman Babayev was looking for experienced foreign managers to replace Goncharenko. And I read that and I was like, yes, this is exactly what CSKA need. They don't need to go around the usual Russian merry-go-round of managers. They don't need to go and just pick up some random club legend like Sergei Ignashevich, who's under heavy, heavy pressure at Torpedo Moscow, and their fans despise him and want him sacked. So it's like they don't need that. They need somebody to come in and a real coach with experience who can nurture this very promising young group of players. So Olic, look, Croatia have been excellent of late, and he is a CSKA legend. He played for them back in 2003 to 7. He won the UEFA Cup under Gudzayev. He was brilliant for them, but I also am not a big fan of these types of transfers. Richard, what do you think on Olic?
Yeah, I'd like to just echo both you and Hanu's thoughts, James. I'm just a bit baffled at it, and admittedly, you could argue Guardiola was the one who kicked all this off, and don't get me wrong, that worked. Guardiola going to Barcelona and the success he's enjoyed, and it really was a launching pad for the brilliant managerial career that he has. But you've also got to remember, just because it's worked at one club doesn't mean it's going to work everywhere. And Guardiola also had a very good tool of players to work with. He had a very good set of players a good set of tools to work with. He had Messi. He had Xavi and Iniesta, two of the finest midfield players on the planet. Experience at the back in Puyol. So yes, whilst it worked for Guardiola, I think what a lot of clubs have done is they've thought just because it works there, everyone copies it. But not all circumstances and situations are the same. And I think I'm expressing the similar doubts as to what you guys have about this one in Ivica Olic. I'm not a fan of this personally. I think CSKA should have been taking on board some of the stuff that we saw yesterday with reports of them looking for a manager with experience in leagues like Germany and France. I threw a few names around on Twitter. You can look at the thread if you want to. I threw a few names around, and this fixation with just appointing club legends because of who they are I think it's baffling. Surely at the end of the day, fans care. Obviously, fans appreciate what these players did for the club during their playing time, and that's the same at any club. But at the end of the day, ultimately every fan will want their club to achieve the best results that they can achieve, and if that means hiring someone who does not have a connection to your club, then so be it. It would never bother me at my club if we never hired an ex-former Wigan Athletic player. If we hire the best coach for the job and they do the job to the best of their ability, then I'm more than, and if they end up being a good move, then so be it. On the Goncharenko situation, I mean, I did even see some people say that I think he should be given more time at CSKA. I don't think this is the right decision. They're third in the league, But Goncharenko has had 4.5 years at the end of this season. That is a long time to give a manager nowadays, I think. That is a long time. And, I had some sympathy with him at the start because 2018-19, I had a bit of sympathy with Goncharenko because he had to rebuild that squad. He had to, gut the squad apart, rebuild it. It was, the whole defensive line of Ignashevich and the Berezitskis retired. He lost Golovin. There was other key departures too. So he had to rebuild that squad. So 2018-19 was a bit of a pass year, but the last 2 years in Europe have just been really, really poor. And CSKA were top seeded in those two Europa League groups. They should have been getting through, both of them really. And that also throws into question with Goncharenko in the 2017-18 season when CSKA reached the quarterfinals of the Europa League. Was that purely because he inherited? The rumours now going around is that was based on the back of inheriting Slutsky's team. And since he's had to rebuild, the results have not been as promising. So I think 4.5 years is a good time, and CSKA are normally a patient club with managers. So I think yes, the time is right now for a clean break, but I'm not entirely convinced at moving Olic in there as a new coach. If they want to have a Russian-speaking manager, I would have probably looked to have tried Vladimir Fedotov at Sochi, or if they want to do something radical and go abroad, then that's what they should do. I have to admit, I'm having my reservations about Ivica Olic already. Obviously, you've got to give every coach a chance, but I don't know if this is the right thing to do.
Yeah, me either. For every Guardiola or Zidane, you get 10 Valeri Karpins. That's just how it works. And yes, Karpin's doing fine at Rostov, but at Spartak, it was probably one of a side that played very exciting football, but were absolutely, utterly useless and really, really poor. You mentioned there, Richard, that Goncharenko's been at CSKA for 4.5 years. It's quite depressing that is the longest serving manager in the RPL at the minute. The only man who comes anywhere near close is Karpin at Rostov, who's been there for just over 3 years, and then not a single other manager and Semak, and not a single other manager aside from them three have been at the club for longer than 2 years, which just shows the managerial merry-go-round in Russia right now. But on Hanu, you mentioned that Semak's one of these club legends who comes in and does well. Obviously, he did well at Ufa before. Talking about Zenit in a more recent games, how do you think Zenit have played in the last two since turning it around after that loss and draw early in the season?
Well, I think they've been pretty impressive. They've shown the sort of qualities that actually made them champions for 2 seasons running, and it seems like they might be on their way to a third. The win against Akhmat were largely awful on that day, but Zenit ran riot, and then against CSK, CSK threw it away themselves, but Zenit showed remarkable resilience in going down and then scoring a late goal and winning the game. And I think a large part of that has been Wendell playing like a 20 million euro player, and he's had a great impact. He's been everywhere. He's playing like not a number 10, but he's taken charge of the creative role that Malcolm was sort of brought in to do, but he's obviously suffered with injuries. So Wendell has been a more stable and a more, perhaps not as exciting, but an equally important part of the Zenit side, and he's allowed the likes of Zuba, the likes of Azmour and so on to really feel free, express themselves. And I feel like if Zenit go on to win the league, which is looking likely, except maybe Spartak, who also looked great. But yeah, if Zenit go on to win the league, I feel like Wendell is going to have to be credited with a large part of that.
Yeah, I was really impressed by Wendell, particularly in the CSKA match. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. And bear in mind that CSKA have got Obliakov, Akhmatov, Vlasic in midfield, which is one of the best midfields in Russia right now, or at least will be. It's definitely one of the most promising. And Wendell's got a 92% pass completion rate. from over 69 touches and 50 passes of the ball. Like, that's absolutely brilliant. I do agree. I don't think he's quite as dynamic as Malcolm. When Malcolm like really gets going, like you can see why Malcolm was a £40 million player. He's one of very few in recent years who really can take a man on and just change a game, like Promes, like Hulk. But Wendell's not quite at that level, but he is incredibly efficient and a very tidy and silky player. And against Siska, that goal was unbelievable. That goal was game changing, like what you would expect from Hulk and all the rest. Richard, what do you think about Wendell? Because I know you've preferred him playing in this more attacking role rather than out wide.
Yeah, me and Joel were discussing it. Fellow RFN writer, we were discussing it on the pod. Sorry, on our chat, and we both agreed that in a free, we think Wendell will be really good. And I think the formation next summer for Zenit is set to go. I think a 4-3-3 could really suit them with Wendell. Being the box to box player in that, and the one that gets forward and transitions from defence to attack. And obviously you've got Malcolm to come into the side. So Sebastian Juicy's probably going to leave in the summer, and Asmoon's probably going to go as well. So I actually think with those two foreign spots being freed up, it's actually perfectly set for Zenit to get a good left-sided player and a good striking replacement for Asmoon and move to a 4-3-3. Now, obviously, I think as well. Yeah, that is what I will be looking to do. And I was really impressed with him in that game. He bossed Siska's midfield. Wendell, you looked at the just the energy he gave the team going forward. His touch is good. He can run with the ball. His passing's quite solid, and like I say, he looks like he's got a good shot on him from distance. So I was really really impressed with the way he played, and he's been good since about November, December. Once he was finally over his injury issues, Wendell, he was really really good. So I think that is a one real good positive for Zenit in the running and going into next season as well. And like I say, I think he's only going to get better in the team. So yeah, I've been very impressed with Wendell. I'm liking him more and more with every game.
Yeah, likewise. Hanu, do you think that Asmoon will be off in the summer, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely going to be off in the summer. I think he's admitted the same. I think he said he wants a new challenge. I think Zenit are trying to sell him. And he's done enough at Zenit. I think it's a good time for everybody to move on.
Yeah, and speaking of moving on, next is everyone's favourite side. So that was a really bad segue. That was even worse than last week's. But anyway,
it's a good effort.
Next is everyone's favourite circus, and that's Spartak, as they beat Ural 5-1, and before that beat Dynamo Moscow in the one of the main Moscow derbies, and before that beat Krasnodar, sitting 6 past them. They've kind of been resurgent by a large part in the return of Quincy Promes, who, look, Larson, Sobolev, and Ponce have been banging them in all season long, 2 of which have got double figures in the league alone. All 3 of them in all competitions have already got double figures, which is quite an astounding feat for all of your strikers to be able to do that in the league. But Promes coming in and going into that free role that Selim Kampakayev had previously had has really just taken that attack to the next level. But I do personally fear that Spartak are a little bit of a glass cannon. Ural are dreadful, like genuinely, absolutely dreadful. They were at the weekend. There was really a spate of constant defensive errors. The midfield just offered absolutely nothing. The only real outlet was Eric Bekfalvi as usual, but they still did threaten Spartak on numerous amounts. In the Krasnodar game and the Dynamo game, they had Alexander Maximenko to thank for basically getting the points, as well as that electric attack. So they are very much a glass cannon right now. If they continue to outscore people, then it doesn't really matter. But this is their issue every time it comes in a title race. They will push Zenit as far as they can. They'll batter a lot of the smaller sides. But then when it comes to playing Siska, playing Zenit, when it really matters, that defence just can't quite stand up. I don't know if that's a little bit harsh, Richard. What do you think about Spartak in the potential title race?
Yeah, I mean, I think Spartak will be kicking themselves a little bit. Those 2 home games against Rostov and Rubin, One was before the winter break, one was just after the winter break. If they'd have gotten 4 points from those 2 games, just imagine now they'd be right on Zenit's tail, level on points with them and chasing them down, and then the pressure really would have been on Zenit for the rest of the season. But in those 2 games, they froze, and it could end up being costly for them. And it's a bit of a shame because I really would have liked to have seen right now both those sides neck and neck on points going for the title. It would have been ace. It would have been a really good title race. But yeah, I do take your point. In some of the bigger games this season, Spartak have been found out a little bit. In both, especially the away game at Zenit and then away at CSKA as well. I mean, you could say still with Spartak that one of the central defenders is Pavel Masov. Now, look, he's 20 years of age. He scored an unfortunate old goal against Dynamo Moscow, but I actually thought for the rest of that game, he played very, very well. In the second half, he did well. And even against Ural, when he made the odd mistake, I noticed one time in the second half, he lost the ball twice, but then went back straight away and recovered it. And I think it's still good for I was still expecting Spartak to possibly bring in a defender, like maybe in the winter transfer window. So it's to Tedesco's credit that he's sticking with Masov and carrying on playing him. And I think, he's only going to, he is a fullback who's had to move to central defence to play in a free. So obviously, he's only 20 years of age. So I think there's a patience element with Maslov, but I think he's been improving over the season. And I still think, Spartak can have that defensive frailty to them, which possibly could hold them back. But overall, I think, what is encouraging is the goal scoring potential of the team is excellent. I think now in Promes and Larson have struck up a brilliant partnership right from Promes' return. Both of them look in red hot form, and Sobolev is scoring goals again. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Yes, there's still a little bit shaky in defence, but they've got the attacking weapons now to score lots of goals, create lots of chances. So yeah, but I think second place would be a good finish for Spartak, considering the issues Tedesco inherited to get them up to second place after just 18 months in charge. I think would be a remarkable achievement, and full credit to him. Just a shame those 2 games either side of the winter break, because I would have really loved to have seen Zenit and Spartak level on points now. That would have been a brilliant title chase.
Yeah, definitely. But it wouldn't be a season if Spartak didn't bottle something at some point. So to quickly run through the end of the title race, it's Zenit are on 48 from 23, Spartak in second with 44 from 23. And then after that, there's actually a little bit of a gap back to Lokomotiv on 40 from 23. Personally, I think they will keep their form up and probably catch up with the other 2, more so than anyone else right now. But it's the race for Europe and mid-table, really, that's kind of morphed into one, where Lokomotiv, third place, 40 points, all the way back to Krasnodar in 10th place on 34 points. It's really tight in there, and specifically, Rubin, Rostov, Dinamo, CSKA, Sochi, and Lokomotiv are all separated by just 3 points, trying to get into those last European spots. Richard, if I come straight back to yourself, you caught an eye with Dinamo's games at the weekend, and particularly the midweek, where they were 2-0 down away to Krasnodar. The defence was performing quite poorly, in my opinion. There was quite a few risky errors. Anton Shunin made a rare error leading directly to a goal. But then their youngsters seemed to bail them out in the end with a brilliant comeback.
Yeah, the second half was excellent. There was a number of good performances in there. I liked the way Morrow got hold of the game in midfield in that second half. His passing range was excellent. He found his targets really well. And what was really interesting with Schwartz was that he switched it to a back 3 in the end. I mean, he had the luxury of being able to do that because Krasnodar were a man down, even though they were 2-0 up. But he moved to a back 3 and actually put Morrow as a central defender, but just one who could step out the line and spray passes around. And that really was a good move because, obviously they had the man advantage to be able to do that. But, he was then dictating play. I was really impressed with Fomin again. That was a lovely goal, and I'm really delighted to see him in the Spornaya squad. We'll talk about that a bit later on, but I'm delighted to see him in there. It was a lovely goal that he scored, and he's been really good all season. And then just, the freshness and the energy of these young players that Sandro Schwartz has brought into the team, like Chukavin, like Zakharyan. He's even getting a tune out of Vyacheslav Gruyev as well. Also, Clinton Ng had a good game when he came on down that right side. He was putting a number of accurate crosses. So yeah, it was fantastic to see these young players like Fomin, like Zakharyan, like Chukavin really turn the game around for Dinamo. And they got 9 points from the return to play out of 12 in their 4 league games, and they won in the Russian Cup as well. So that's probably more than what they would have bargained for. They were probably looking at 5-6 points in those 4 games for the winter break. Sorry, just after the winter break. And they've got to run of games now, 4 games against teams who are mid-table or nothing to play for, the likes of or down at the bottom like Ural, Ufa. So this is a chance now for Dinamo to really rack up some points in the next few weeks. And I still think, personally, my opinion is that I think if they are going to qualify for Europe, Dinamo, I think the Conference League is probably best for them. I don't quite think they're ready for Europa League or the Champions League just yet. I still think there's some bits that Schwartz needs to improve in the summer. I think the Spartak game was a bit of a reality check. Out the second half, Spartak were by far the better side against Dinamo last weekend. They really took control of the game and fully deserved their win. So I still want to see some signings in the summer from Dinamo. I still think if they're going to qualify for Europe Conference League, it would have to be. But even if they finish 6th, okay, it's the same position as last year, but don't make Europe. At least I'm seeing some progress, which is good. Last year they finished 6th purely by being the best of a bad bunch. This year you can actually see there's progress in the style that they're playing as well. It's not the turgid defensive football that they were playing under Novikov. It's actually a progressive style of football built around young players. So I still think they might just miss out on Europe, but if they do qualify, I think the Conference League will be ideal for them. I think the Europa League and the Champions League will be a step too far. But it is really encouraging signs seeing these young players develop under Schwartz, and it's just brilliant to see. Just like Nikolic, just like Slutsky at Rubin, I'm really happy to see this kind of thing.
Yeah, certainly. Dinamo's got quite an exciting future potentially with Schwartz in charge, with Zelko Buvac in a sporting director, and they really, in the summer, released a lot of the aging players and released some of the contracts, replaced them with youth. If you look at Dinamo's squad, Dinamo's was actually the starting 11 was the youngest average age of any RPL side midweek.
And I didn't know that. Well,
in the front 6, Fomin's the oldest at 24, Morrow and Lesovoy is only 23, Shemansky 21, Gruliov 21, Zakharyan's not even 18 yet, Tukavin, who came on, is only just turned 18. Aside from Shunin, the entirety of the first team is under the age of the starting lineup was under the age of 30. The next youngest after that was Spartak, who are also very similar. Lots of exciting young players really coming through. I think the future is potentially bright for Dinamo. I think Arsene Zakharyan rightfully deserves his place on that Guardian Next Generation list or whatever it was, because every single game he's played, he's just changed it. He's been absolutely brilliant so far, and hopefully he can keep that form up because he is quite young. Hopefully he's not just riding a crest of a wave right now. But there's this old adage that Galitsky had at Krasnodar that he wanted a team of Krasnodar Academy products in the 11. He wanted a manager of history of working through these products all the way up through the academy levels. So if we move a little bit down to Krasnodar, they actually had the second oldest starting 11 of any side midweek, and there was more Zenit Academy products in that team than there was Krasnodar. So Hanu, I know you're a famous fan of Murad Masayev in Krasnodar. Do you think they can turn it around at all, or are they potentially looking over the shoulders to your other favourite team, Akhmat?
Absolutely not. They are an awful club which has. They make me so angry, right? And it's irrational. No, it's irrational actually. It's not irrational anymore. It's completely irrational. They can't turn it around. They're not getting Europe. Murad Musayev should have been sacked 3 months ago, and he's still got a job. Their academy has produced 3 to 4 players of actual quality. They keep getting into contract disputes with their own players, and then yeah, that keeps happening. Happened with Ivan Ignatiev, happened with Shapi for a bit, apparently happening with Safonov now. Their transfer business over the past 2 years has been questionable, to say the to be polite. It has been questionable. I can't remember the last 223 player they signed, and now you're hearing rumors of them wanting, like, the front runner for their job, for their manager job, is Viktor Goncharenko. And it is seriously leading me to question if that club actually has its own best interests at hand. Because not only are they extremely opaque when it comes to their media efforts and everything, that's off the pitch, that's fine, whatever, right? But
Yeah.
because Krasnodar, why they represented such a great hope in Russian football was that at a point it looked like they could actually challenge the sort of faction of elites like CSKA, Zenit, and Spartak, which would send shockwaves because it's a completely private club which has
Yeah.
gone and won the league. And now it just seems like they're entering this stage of mediocrity and this stage of shooting themselves in the foot, where they're just going to end up like Rostov and Dinamo, where they're always sort of challenging for Europe. They're never going to get relegated, but they're never going to do anything more than that. And it doesn't seem like any major changes to change that and to actually be a part of the elite are being made. And yeah, like I'm really confused in the direction that they're choosing to go in. I don't know how Musayev's still in the job, given he keeps embarrassing himself. And we often talk about how Russian football's got so many problems. Why are we so bad in Europe? And we haven't been able to pinpoint the reason yet. And I firmly believe now that it's just the managers, because Goncharenko, we know, is not a great manager. Nikolic was only a few months in his job at Loco when they were in the Champions League. Semak has been pretty like mediocre in Europe. And then you've got Murad Musayev, who won one game against Rennes, and on that basis he managed to qualify. But that's the thing. I don't get what Krasnodar are trying to do. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but yeah, just everything about them reeks of this sort of incompetence at the moment.
Yeah, I think the most frustrating thing about Krasnodar and why we kind of do come down on them like a ton of bricks is when you hit the nail on the head there. It's the potential of Krasnodar. They are really showing, like, you look at Russian football and you discuss the problems, and some of the problems are from academy level, not giving players chances, sending them out too early because they're too small or because they're not quite good enough. Like George Zhikia was a Lokomotiv academy player, got shipped out because he was considered too small to be a centre back, ended up being Russian national team vice captain. You see Krasnodar, and they could break this St. Petersburg Moscow hegemony over the league. They have the best academy. They can show they do things the right way off the pitch and on the pitch. And it's so frustrating because of the potential that's there for everyone else to say, look at that, look at this as a way to hold yourselves up and as a way to move forward. And I think that is why we do seem to come across so harsh on them, because it's just so frustrating. Richard, any last words on Krasnodar?
Yeah, just to come in on Krasnodar, it's interesting as well how we've been questioning the likes of Tony Villeneuve and Christopher Olsen in that midfield. Well, look at who they were playing at the midweek. Dinamo, they had a former Krasnodar academy player in Daniel Fomin in the midfield. So it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Like, they're looking for a midfielder right now who's better than what they've got, and they had a good midfield player. He did well at Ufa, and Dinamo just stole in and bought him before Krasnodar could potentially look at buying him back. So yeah, there needs to be a push with Krasnodar. I'm with you guys on this. There needs to be a push with Krasnodar now. They're not, to use a comparative English Premier League example, we're not talking about a club in mid-table here in Krasnodar, a mid-table level club who are punching above the weight last few seasons. They're one of the best backed clubs in Russian football. They've got one of the wealthiest owners. They've got arguably the best academy. This is like, in reputation terms, they're sort of like a Tottenham or an Arsenal level club. They should be up competing with trophies. They're not this mid-table club anymore. They need to start thinking in that way. And I think, there needs to be a spark with Krasnodar, because at the minute it's all in danger of going a bit stale, and that would be a real shame.
Yeah, certainly. And if we stay down the south coast, just a little bit further towards the Black Sea, Sochi are kind of the antithesis of Krasnodar, and yet they are both new clubs. But Sochi they took St. Petersburg, moved them all the way down south to what is essentially a holiday resort with nobody there. I should dislike Sochi. Everything about my being tells me to dislike Sochi. I hate what they did to Dinamo. I don't like Boris Rotenberg. when you look at the team midweek, they absolutely destroyed Tampov 5-0. The average age of the side was 30.6. Only Novoseltsev, Miladinovic, Zaika, and Zavolotny were actually under the age of 30.
Jesus.
But they were brilliant, and a large part of that is just down to Christian Noboa. We interviewed him on the site, so full disclaimer on that, and he is a friend of RFN. But if you just look at his stats, he had 113 touches, 97 passes against Tampov, 7 key passes. He didn't score, but he got 2 assists and was easily the man of the match. He's currently statistically the highest rated player out of anybody in the entirety of the RPL. I just wish he was given a bigger chance at Zenit, because he really deserves it. And I think he's probably been one of the best players in the RPL over the last 10 years. I just wanted to basically put a little word out for Noboa, and just absolute admiration at the way he's been playing this season. It's unbelievable. And before moving on to where probably Sochi should be and have been before this run, is to the relegation race. And I think it's fair to say that Tambov, Ufa, Arsenal and Rota are pretty much all but confirmed as going to be the 4 sides in the relegation and the relegation playoff spaces. Hanu, to come to yourself, Tambov, are they dead?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, certainly. They've lost every game since the return. They've got a team of players you've either never heard of or just there just to get game time from on loan from other clubs. But Richard, do you think that Ufa could potentially jump out of the automatic relegation spaces now that Gazizov's back and challenge Arsenal, or a managerless with the departure of Katskevich, Rota?
I think they probably could get out of the automatic relegation zone, yes. I actually think that Arsenal and Ufa will get out of there, and I am actually going to tip Rotor now to go down automatically with Tambov. Rotor just, I think Ufa, they showed against Lokomotiv. It was a narrow defeat. The in games now, I think that's the most important thing with Ufa. They're starting to show signs of a bit of a revival. And I think when they start playing against opponents, unlike Rubin and Lokomotiv, opponents, who I don't really expect them to get anything from. But when they play some of the opponents down there and some of the ones in mid-table who've got nothing to play for, I do expect them to start picking up a few points. So yeah, I think they will get themselves out of it, and I think they and Arsenal will finish 13th and 14th in whatever order, and I think Rotor will drop into the relegation zone and be relegated. So.
Yeah, they've been pretty dreadful. It all depends for me upon who they replace Katskevich with, because Katskevich did excellent with Rota in the league below. He's a very experienced manager, but they have been pretty dreadful this season, especially going forward. There's just very little there. It's all based upon the individual quality of Flammarion and Ponsa, which isn't exactly the highest, to be honest, in their best of times anyway. Or Zarico going on a mazy dribble. There's not a lot of game plan there, and I can see why he's gone. Whether or not Rota drop into those automatics for me is based upon who they appoint to replace him, and whether or not that's just some no-mark club legend or an actual coach again. But unfortunately, we're going to have to move on, and we'll move on because this weekend's actually, there's no RPL action with the onset of the international break that's coming. As I mentioned earlier, Russia play 3 World Cup qualifiers against Slovakia, Slovenia and Malta. And I'll quickly run through Stanislav Cherchesov's squad for those 3 games. The goalkeepers, Yuri Chupin, Anton Shunin, Sozlan Zhanayev. Defense of Zhikia, Zherkov, Kalavayev, Zhirov, Kudlyashov, Neustadter, Shamoshnikov, Semyonov, Smolnikov and Mario Fernandez. Midfielders, Ilzat Akhmetov, a return of Alexander Golovin, Rifat Zhamaletdinov, Roman Zobnin, Alexei Ionov, Dalek Kozyaev, Andrei Mostovoy, Magomed Ozdoyev, Lezian Mirzov, Alexei Milanchuk and Daniil Fomin. And then the strikers, as usual, are the 3 big men up top of Artyom Zuba, Alexander Sobolev and Anton Zabolotny. Now, that is a little bit of a long list. Go on the RFN Twitter feeds and you can find Hanu's got the squad together and translated it from Russian. There has been a few changes though since then. Alexander Zhirov, of course, is the centre back who's based in Sandhausen in Germany. Unfortunately, due to COVID and travel restrictions, he can't actually get to Slovakia for the game, so he's just been replaced entirely by Ilya Kutepov for the squad. And since the announcement as well, Roman Zobnin and Sozlan Zhanayev have both pulled out due to injury. They've been replaced by Mikhail Mukin, Mukin, a young central midfielder at Lokomotiv, and Andrei Lunyov, who's in a little bit of a resurgence of form of late. So just quickly on this one, guys. Hanu, any shout-outs there? Any excited call-ups? Or do you think it's a bit more the same from Cherchesov?
No, it's actually one of the better squads he's put out ever, I'd say. I think I'm only mad at Ionov, Zherkov, and Neustadt. Everybody else seems fine. I'm happy to see Golovin back. Happy to see Miranchuk back. Happy to see Samoshnikov, Dupin, a few of these guys. Yeah, so I like the squad, honestly. I don't have anything negative to say.
Richard?
Yeah, it's a better squad pick from Cherchesov this time. I mean, there's still, like I knew, I still have a few gripes about one or two positions. Like, I'm not a fan of Ionov being in there. Do you really need three right backs with Karavayev, Fernandez, and Smolnikov? I'm not really sure you do. I would have personally preferred to see Dmitry Skopintsev in there ahead of Yuri Zherkov. I'm still just perplexed as to how a guy who's not playing for Zenit nowadays is still getting called up for Russia. At least with Kudryashov, you can play him as a centre back in a free. When he has played every single minute this season for Antalyaspor in Turkey, so he's still played at a relatively decent level. So fair enough. Really happy to see Samoshnikov in there. Yuri Dupin deserves his call up. I think are they playing Malta first of those three games?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if I personally, I don't know whether Stani will do this, but I would probably start Samoshnikov in that game. Malta is a very modest opponent on paper anyway. If you've got to blood young players at some point, and I think these last couple of weeks for Rubin, he's been excellent, and I think he would deserve it. And yeah, I'd like to see a few younger players, maybe Fomin, given a go against Malta. So yeah, he has been one of his better squads. I think still one or two bits.
Mm-hmm.
I think he could have improved on, but nonetheless, one of the better squads. So
yeah, considering Cherchesov's the most conservative man in the world, it's not too bad. We've mentioned before, we've probably became a bit of a broken record in saying that in Russia, generally, it tends to be big batches of players that come through all at once. Russia's under-21s currently is probably just as good as the first team, nearly. And that it is actually the most experienced under-21s side out of all the recent international sides that have been composed. They have more combined, they have more first-team caps than any other side in Europe. So I can see why he is still hesitant to call up certain players. With the Zobnin pulling out, Mukin's been called up because he doesn't want to pull away people like Obliakov from the under-21 side. So
yeah, I understand that.
It is because he's working in phases. But yeah, I'm delighted to see Dupin in there, Samoshnikov. I'm actually glad that Zhirov is included because it's totally different, and he's been brilliant for Sandhausen this season. It's something that I didn't really expect from Cherchesov, but I don't know why he has a proclivity for every single striker to be like 6'12" and just complete target man. But like it's better than it has been recently. Yeah, the one big name constantly annoying is the fact that Yuri Zherkov is like 67 now and is still in the squad week in, week out. But it's been better, and because the international break is boring, we're going to move on, but we will cover Russia's games after they are played. Because we've got a little interesting return of the RFN Mailbag, and of course this time it is the RFN and whatever this is Mailbag, with Hanu obviously joining us. Now we did put out a tweet calling out for some questions, comments, and concerns from you all to get in touch, and we've had quite a few people reply in the tweet and send us emails in. So thank you all who's got in touch. So first off is David Dano, friend of the site, the man behind FC Zenit Mauritius. So, if you could, what three things would you change in the RPL? So I think we'll take one each, and I'm going to take the hosting rights and the easy way out of going first by saying get rid of the foreigner limit? Richard?
Yeah, we could all say that one. So yeah, I'll let you have that one. Yeah, one thing I would put in there is I want to start seeing from now to the end of the season is a bit more of what we've been talking about earlier in the pod, like from the likes of Nikolic at Lokomotiv, from the likes of Schwartz at Dinamo, from the likes of Tedesco at Sparta. I want to start seeing some more experimentation from clubs and, developing, more of a positive vibrancy and style about the league. I think, I like the way that young players at Lokomotiv and Dinamo have been integrated. I like the way Slutsky has been given, players like Samoshnikov and Makarov, who were brought in from the FNL, chances in the first team, not just going, I'll wait, I'll play them in 3-4 months' time. No, he's integrated them right now into the squad, developing them, improving them. And there's two clubs I really want to call out on this, and that's Atmat and Ural. In mid-table, they're pretty much those two clubs. They're not going to get relegated. They're not going to qualify for Europe. The rest of the season pretty much is, Atmat's still in the cup, but the rest of the season in the league is pretty much now dead rubber. A lot of dead rubber games. I don't really, in the case of Ural, want to keep seeing them play Pavel Pobredniak up front. I'd rather see them try something different. They brought in Maximenko and Gadji Medurov from the FNL. They've got a younger striker in Andrei Panyukov. I want to start seeing them experiment a bit more. And it's same with Atmat too. They brought in Gabriel Iancu, who, was top scorer in the Romanian league last season with Viitorul Constanța. Yeah, he's been very, very slow to Andrei Talaiev's been very, very slow to, give him some starts. I want to see these guys get starts. I don't want to keep seeing Vladimir Ilyin play and Pavel Pobredniak play at Ural. We know what these guys can do. Let's freshen up the squads a little bit and just experiment and probably try and play a bit more of a positive style, more in tune with what we're seeing from the likes of Schwartz and Nikolic and Slutsky. Experiment a bit. That's, because we've seen at Rotor with how horrendously bad they've been attacking. I want to start seeing this ultra conservatism of some coaches removed, and let's start playing some younger players, integrating signings right from the get-go, because signings are only gonna we're only going to make a proper judgment about signings if you properly give them a chance. And I think you've got to integrate them at some point. So yeah, that's probably one little gripe I've going to get off my chest a little bit, because and I think it's you could condition that across the whole of the league sometimes. But yeah, I want to start seeing that a bit more. I want to start seeing the progressive guys who are doing the things that Nikolic is doing at Loco and Schwartz is doing at Dinamo and Slutsky at Rubin. I want to start seeing more of that across the league to make it more attractive. So that's one thing I would probably change.
And Hanu, what one thing would you change in the LPL?
Yeah, I was thinking of something more institutional, so I'd probably go with trying the best to make the league as financially sustainable and as commercially attractive as possible. So just privatize things, like promote investment, whether that's foreign or local, and foreigner limit obviously said. And one other thing I'm sorry I'd like to add is I just like more new people to come through, like just new voices, new types of people, no more dinosaurs. So yeah, that's what I want really.
So from Ben at the Ben Zenit, what are the biggest transfer flops in the history of the league? Now, I'm going to come from this from a Spartak perspective right now, because let me tell you, there's some hilariously terrible signings for a hell of a lot of money that Spartak have shipped out on crap. Gus Till, 15 million. Gus Till cost Spartak 15 million. You got the famous, of course, Pedro Rocha, cost 11 million to sit and play in the FNL week in, week out for Spartak 2 and still be bad. But I think the one that always comes to mind is a little bit older one, a little bit of an older transfer, is that of the Argentinian striker Fernando Cavanaghi. Now, he was signed from River Plate in 2004 for just under 10 million. I think it was 8.5 million at the time. He was absolutely dreadful. I think he was famous for I think he's most famous for getting an assist for Spartak. But he scored I think he scored 1 in 5. He got double figures for Spartak. But for the money that was paid, for when it was paid, I mean, this was a time when Oleg Romantsev had not long left the club. Fedun had not long came in, and Spartak didn't really sign that many foreigners away from like the satellite states, the former Soviet satellite states. And this guy came in for big money in 2004 and just absolutely flopped. Richard, who do you think? Any big transfer flops of late?
Yeah, I'll go with those that you mentioned. I even read Gus Till has struggled at Freiburg. I even remember hearing about him playing a couple of games for the second side, which that really is a come down of epic proportions. And Russia obviously as well. His career really is in limbo at the minute. I mean, goodness knows what is going to happen there, because it's just Spartak are just trying to offload him, but no one wants him. It's just Spartak don't really want him. No one else really wants him. I think the most obvious one, really, looking at current recent events, is Adolfo Geish. And, going back to what we were saying about Goncharenko earlier, that's probably also another reason why Goncharenko is feeling the heat at the moment, because apparently we were looking on our RFN chat on Facebook over the winter break, and apparently we got wind of Geish was the one who pushed for Goncharenko was the one who pushed for the Adolfo Geish transfer, which, if true, that's probably another reason at the minute why, the speculation over his future, because ultimately at the end of the day, he was the one who wanted that transfer, and it hasn't worked out. And when you pay such a huge amount of money for a player, nearly 10 million euros, it's not good. So yeah, Geish just was such a disappointment. I mean, admittedly, I don't know whether it was partly, it might have been, he never really looked super convincing in some of the games he played, but then again, did Goncharenko adopt the tactics to suit him? That might have been an issue too. He strikes me as someone who really needs to be paired up with somebody in an attacking too. But yeah, I'd probably go with Adolfo Geish. That's the one that sticks out in my mind.
And Hanu, worst transfer of all time in the
Probably going to say Pedro
RPL?
Rocha, because they're not going to make any money off of him, and they paid a lot of money for him. Otherwise, Maximilian Philipp comes to mind. He was god awful for the 20 million
Yes,
they paid for him.
yes.
We all forgot about him, really. But if they can get like 12 million, even 10 million back for him, then it's not that bad. But yeah, probably Pedro Rocha.
Does anybody remember Mozart for Spartak?
Yeah,
Not the composer.
I've heard of him. I mean,
Briefly, yeah. It was just when I was just taking a slight interest in Russian football, only very briefly though.
Yeah, he was decent. He played like a lot for Spartak, like more than you would expect. But he was fine. He was good. He's one of the ones who's kind of fondly remembered by Spartak fans. I just always think of Mozart when I think of flops, and he's not a flop. It's just more of a meme of the fact that Spartak signed two classical composers, or Brazilians named after classical composers, in 2 years in a row. But Hanu, which Russian managers are good enough to go abroad? It's a low list.
Yeah, I mean, abroad, I would presume for like they'd have like, I don't know. I think Leonid Slutsky and Fedotov. That's it. Yeah.
I think I would say my favourite manager and everyone's favourite manager, and Alexander Grigorian, is probably very talented and one of the best who could go abroad anywhere.
Well,
Obviously,
yeah.
famously just came back from Armenia
That
as
is
well.
abroad, exactly. So yeah. So that's as far abroad as he's gonna go.
Richard, any for you? Any Russian managers who could actually go abroad and ply their trade elsewhere?
Yeah, probably just the two that Hanu mentioned, really, Fedotov and Slutsky. I mean, if Samat can adapt tactically next season, then I won't rule that out in the future. But this season has shown, especially with the performances in Europe, he's got a lot to learn. But the two at the minute, yeah, I'd call with Slutsky and Fedotov. And I say it's just so strange that CSKA are looking at, to reiterate my point once again, it's so strange that they're looking at Olic. To me, Fedotov is he's just saying loud and clear to CSKA, come and get me. I'm coaching well at Sochi. Look what I could do with CSKA's players when I'm taking one of the oldest squads in the RPL and making it perform to that level. So yeah, I think Fedotov and Slutsky would be my two on current amongst the current crop of Russian managers, which really does say a lot about the current crop of Russian coaches.
Yeah, it's quite slim pickings, to be honest. There's a lot. I mean, like a couple of years ago, everyone definitely would have said Semak when Zenit had won the league twice in a row, or even after the first year when he got Zenit win the league again for the first time in forever. He just came off the back of a very successful spell with Ufa, leading them into Europe. So Semak, he could do it, but like you said, it's these performances for Zenit in Europe this season and last season are particularly worrying, and really is like quite a red flag. The last one on my Twitter page is from Connor, that's at Uzbek Football UK, and he's asked us to pick the top 3 to 5 Russian prospects and choose which league and club you'd like to see them leave the RPL if they were to this summer. So, guys, I think we'll just take one each, just for the interest of time. So, Hanu, what one Russian prospect would you like to leave the league, and where would you like to see them go?
Igor Deviv, probably anywhere in the top 5.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Deveyev. Richard, anyone in particular?
I'll go with the centre half in. I'd like to see Evgeniev go abroad as well. I think, and again, anywhere in the top 5. I think Germany would be a good place. Germany's really good for developing young players and bringing them on. And I'd quite like to see Evgeniev go abroad. And I think the German Bundesliga will be really good if you can find a club there.
Yeah, that's something that doesn't really happen very often with Russian players as well. They don't really. I mean, look, Russia has less players than just about any other country in Europe abroad plying their trade right now. It's something that's a typically Russian and English problem. Both countries have that issue where not many players do tend to move away from what's comfortable. Particularly with Russia, is you very, very rarely see a Russian centre backs moving abroad, or Russian defenders moving abroad to experience different cultures. In that, I would like to see, I think eventually people like Zakharyan and Pinyayev and the real young lot make their moves. Like, not yet, it's far too early yet. They need to develop at their own clubs first. But I want to see them making moves like Golovin has, like Lyosha Miranchuk has, where they are really going out there and saying, look, this is where we want to develop, this is where we can really make ourselves better and can develop Russian football, like Cherchesov did. He's born in Spain, I think, wasn't he? But like, stay out.
No, he was born in Nizhny, but his father was playing in Spain, and he's been living there since he was about 9, 10, I think. So
yeah, move out at an earlier age, like him, and really develop and really immerse yourself into the culture, because you don't want to see another Kokorin who's constantly linked with moves away. I think he was linked with every single league in Europe at some point during his career, and then finally does get his move away after he's already in the wrong end of 30. Otherwise, like him, you leave it far too late. We did have 3 emails come in as well. The first one's from David Mitchell, and he's asked, can you fill us in about the latest in the doping scandals? Now, I presume that you mean, David, the recent one with Rostov's Vladimir Obukov. And this is basically that FIFA have told the RFU that they are going to initiate investigative proceedings against 3 Russian footballers over concealed doping offences dating back to 2013. Obukov himself was guilty of taking a banned growth substance in under-21s national team training camp in this year, and neither the RFU nor the players' camp have denied the claims. Now he faces a 4-year ban if he is punished, and the 2 other players are former Torpedo player Ivan Kanayev. I'm not even going to try and say that. I can barely speak English, and that Russian is very hard to read. And female footballer Daria Meshkayova. Now, if Obukov is found guilty, he absolutely and entirely deserves this. Any doping of any level in the game is just horrendous. It's appalling. It's disgusting. It's every expletive that you can think about is that. Is this further, especially with what's gone on in recent years surrounding Russian athletics, the mystery about Ruslan Kambalov's sudden disappearance from any form of football for 6 months, all the Icarus scandal and all the purported and reported state-sponsored doping. It's an issue that's plaguing Russia for a very long time, and it needs to end. It's disgraceful. Like, if Obukov is guilty, then he fully deserves this 4-year ban, and there's nothing less, in my opinion, that can be said about that. We had an email from Augustus Caldwell. He claims that in my Football Manager saves, the introduction of the European Conference League is a boon for Russian clubs, and they frequently end up winning it, thus greatly improving the UEFA coefficient. As we all know, Football Manager's word is gospel. So do you think this is likely to happen as Russian teams are generally not quite good enough to win the Champions League or Europa League? Richard, what do you think?
Well, I think in general, for the Europa Conference League has kind of been set up for leagues like the RPL, and also for generally speaking, leagues outside of the Big Five in Europe, because the last team outside of the Big Five leagues in Europe to win the Champions League was Porto, and that was back in 2004. And then the last team to win the Europa League, even from outside of the Big Five leagues, was actually Porto themselves in 2011 under André Villas-Boas. So you can see this new competition, the Europa Conference League, has been set up for leagues outside of the top five. And I think that Russia is in a decent position in this competition, theoretically anyway, even if the results in Europe in the last couple of years have not been great. Because if you look at the Russian Premier League now, you've sort of got, I think, a batch of about 7 or 8 clubs: Zenit, CSKA, Dinamo, Spartak, Lokomotiv, Sochi, Rubin, and Krasnodar. All those 8 clubs are quite well backed. They've got the potential, a lot of them, to be playing in that competition over the next 5 years. So it's a competition which, yes, with the right managerial recruitment, better transfers in the summer, and also, maybe a relaxing of the foreign limit, maybe to 12 players rather than the current limit of 8, where I think if some of those factors were to happen, there's absolutely no reason why the Russian teams couldn't compete to try and win the Conference League. I see it as an opportunity to boost the coefficient points of the league going forward, and we definitely need that now after 2 really poor seasons. And I really do see the Conference League as an opportunity for Russian clubs, and it's a competition which they should be trying to win. Also, as well, what you've got to bear in mind too is that the big leagues are only getting, the Big Five leagues are only getting 1 representative each in this, so the draws that the Russian teams would get in the group stage in the earlier rounds for this would be, theoretically anyway, not as high a level of an opponent that they'd be playing. So I think this new Conference League is an opportunity for Russian clubs which they've got to try to grasp. Obviously, the caveat is, certain factors have got to change. Like I mentioned, the foreign limit ideally will be lifted completely, but if it's relaxed to 12, I think that will give Russian clubs more depth. I'd like to see, some fresh new managers on the scene. If Zenit don't do well in Europe again next season, probably like to see them go down the foreign route again. I'd like to see a fresh change at CSKA. We don't know what's going to happen with Tedesco at Spartak yet. But yeah, in theory, the Conference League should act as possibly a rebuilding competition for Russian clubs in Europe. And I'm really looking forward to it. As someone who also follows other Big Five leagues too, I'm looking forward to seeing how those leagues will become more... Will give clubs outside the top 5 a chance to win a trophy in Europe, and I'm looking forward to it, and it is an ideal chance for the Russian clubs to rebuild based on the reasons I've said previously.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully, we can finally get some Russian sides competing in Europe for some honours, even if they are third-tier honours or whatever. The coefficients are still vitally important at those later rounds, and every single time you progress, you get the bonus points. The last one from Phil, and he asks that we keep his second name anonymous, so we'll respect that. What are your views on the Black Lives Matter movement and kneeling ahead of matches? Now, Hanu, I've seen yourself tweeting about this and about the kind of the way that it's been reported upon in the Russian media in particular, and their almost anti-BLM reporting, I think, it's been pretty disgusting, to be quite honest. Hanu, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm probably going to go on for far too long, but I was saying that to start, I'm completely in support of any movement or any campaign which supports racial equality, gender equality, anything. And I think our audience will be more interested in listening to how Russian media and how Russian football has handled the entire thing. And with kneeling in particular as well, I don't have any issues with it. It's something important. It has given a lot of attention to the great cause that's being promoted through it. And I feel like a lot of footballers and stuff have had issues with it being just a performative action where you're kneeling for a couple of seconds before every game, but nothing else is being done to combat racism in football, which is obviously a very fair thing to do and say, and they're within their rights to say that, and everybody is within their rights to kneel or not kneel or so on, and that's up to everybody else. And in Russia, for those who are not aware, BLM, the concept of BLM has been looked at with a great deal of scrutiny and with a great deal of antagonism ever since the protests in America began last year. And I've spoken, I mean, most Russians you would see in basically every game a Russian team played in Europe, or even when the Russian referee was refereeing a game midweek, Russian players have decided almost exclusively to not kneel. And I've spoken to Russian people. I've had debates with Russian people. People I respect, people I have great admiration for, and they've given me some very valid reasons as to why certain Russian people may not kneel, but that doesn't take away from their commitment to fighting racial injustice and so on. Where it gets tricky, I feel like, and I should preface this by saying that Russian football is full of tons and tons of great people, tons and tons of people that stand up for the right things. Um, most people in Russian football are completely regular people like me and you who are moral and good people, and so on and so forth. But I feel like the way in which the stakeholders and the torchbearers of Russian football have handled racial injustice, or their words on BLM or on any such thing, have been quite disappointing and depressing, to say the least. So, for example, we saw when that idiot Dinamo manager said whatever he said about girls playing football, and although we mostly saw that the response was, people excoriating him, we also saw lots of idiots sort of say, "Oh no, he's right," so on and so forth. Even when the PSG Basaksehir situation happened, where the players walked off the pitch, that was pretty jarring for me, because the overwhelming sentiment on the timeline was, one, they should get on with it; two, oh, the guy said nothing wrong; three, what's this going on? There's too much BLM. There's too much, which is sad to see, especially from people who you think are educated and who are educated. And then what's even worse is that people say that Russian football, we've been fighting RFN. One of the major things RFN has done is it's been sort of the only Western publication that has fought the conception that Russia is full of racist shitheads, and you shouldn't play Russian, you shouldn't be a part of Russian football because it's just full of racism and racist chants and everything. And that's not true at all. But I feel like there are certain things which need to be combated, which Russia doesn't help itself with. So a prevailing trend that's been going on is that Russians haven't taken well to BLM, haven't taken well to any of it. And now what's going on is that whenever there's an opportunity for a player or a referee or a person to not kneel, let's say they don't kneel, then it becomes this entire trend and campaign in Russian football where they've made it into an entire news story. Thousands of people are championing that with severe racist undertones. Sometimes it's explicit, sometimes it's not. And the referee, for example, was basically being heralded as the national hero because he chose not to kneel. It's pretty irrelevant to the large scale of things, but just in Russia, you had respected publications writing 6 to 7 articles, basically championing, oh, look at this, oh, well done, congratulations, you stood up for the right thing. And then you have thousands of people in the comments like, oh, well, he's done. And then they're writing follow-up pieces to that. Oh, is this guy going to get banned? Oh, is this going to happen? And oh, is this going to happen? So we've said in the past that Russian football ultras, or those at the top of Russian football, haven't done enough to combat the problems that exist within their own ultra faction. Zenit, in particular, is a club that I've been very critical of when it comes to this. But I feel like the vast majority of Russian football media's coverage of everything that's been related to racial equality has been quite disappointing and quite jarring, where they're essentially looking for ways to justify their own actions of not kneeling or of not supporting a campaign or whatever. And I'd like to know what you guys think. That's basically the end of my extremely long-winded rant. But it's just been disappointing because there's so many good people and there's so much good in Russian football, but when you see things like this, when you see people tearing down legitimate campaigns and legitimate sentiments, it's really sad to see. And especially when you see people championing a referee simply because he didn't kneel, that just seems awfully, this doesn't seem right to me. It seems immoral to me. And I mean, I'd like to know what you guys think. That's the end of my rant.
Yeah, I've also discussed this with some Russian colleagues and friends of ours, and some of them don't like the idea of kneeling per se, purely because they feel like they are patriotic people and it's unpatriotic to do so if it's to kneel against your country and your nation. I don't agree with that. I understand that. I understand where they come from. The problem is when you have these articles where and these sentiments of anti-BLM, anti-campaigns, these anti-movements, is this isn't just racism. This is actively putting down anti-racism. We have been fervent artists at RFN. I feel like hopefully tend to try and toe with the line on the middle ground between the difficulty of the West and the East. Of you have one side saying this, another side saying this, and they're always butting heads. And we try to toe that line. We try to create that bridge. Back in 2014, we got in touch with Robert Ustian, who created Siska Fans Against Racism. And to not put words into anyone's mouth, I will read directly an excerpt from the excellent interview with Robert, the man behind Siska Fans Against Racism, on the site. And he said that we are a group of dedicated Siska fans who want to change general perception of the club supporters to show the other side, the bright side of our legendary club with great traditions. The incident in Rome, which was the quick aside, the incident of Nazi salutes given in Rome in 2014, was the point in where we said enough is enough. Siska's international image was completely ruined. We are perceived not as a team that won the UEFA Cup, but as one which is awful racist fans who focus only upon destroying things and abusing black people. Now, this is Robert's words directly. I'm not putting words into his mouth. This is an interview directly with Robert. And I think he's absolutely bang on in this. It's not about, oh, we disagree with this, we don't have this problem. It's the problem is these articles and these schools of thought are putting down hugely important issues. They're trying to claim that the Black lives don't matter. To be honest, I mean that might be a little bit incendiary, but that's exactly how it comes across. It's ridiculing it. It's saying that, oh, what's this Marxist BLM? BLM is a non-for-profit charitable organisation purely about. Look, it's the best thing I can say way of describing it is a scene of little black girl holding up a photo, and it's not saying, and she had a placard saying, "We're not saying only Black lives matter. We know all lives matter. All we're doing is asking you for help to make our lives matter more." And that's like obviously it was probably drawn by her parents, but this little 6-year-old girl holding up this sign, and it's one of the best ways I've seen of describing it possible. At the end of the day, it's a movement for justice, for racial justice, and for equality. And I don't see how in any world actively supporting people who go against that and mocking it and ridiculing it is helping the perception of Russia and Russian football fans elsewhere in the world, rightly or wrongly, because we know that, look, before the World Cup, you had a spate of articles and whatever else from Western outlets saying Russia is racist, football of violent, festival of violence at the World Cup, racist fans, violent. Like it was again, it was hammered into you, and that's not true. But actions like this, articles like this, feed that stereotype, feed that perception. It causes, like we had Ilya on last week discussing about the sexism in Russian football, and he was almost exacerbated at times because these sort of opinions make normal the vast majority of football fans in the nation look worse and appear worse. In this article, we've got a little girl with Robert here who's holding up a Siska Fans Against Racism Nazi symbol. It's not. It encompasses all people in all ages, racism. I can't understand why anybody would want to go against this and ridicule this directly, even if you don't agree with necessarily the overarching argument, or maybe have issues with kneeling due to pitches. You have your own little nuances. It's just incredibly frustrating.
It is, yeah, definitely. You
It's
put it really well,
exacerbating.
but yeah, it is draining at times because I got into Russian football in 2017, and I was sort of on the crusade to fix these perceptions in before the World Cup. When I remember writing a piece for some Celtic fan site when Zenit were going to come to town, and at that point there was this thing that the Scottish Sun, horrible establishment, wrote, which was that, oh, Russian hooligans are going to come and trash Glasgow, which was as idiotic as what we see in Russian media. But as time has gone on, it's unfortunately, as we've sort of delved deeper into Russian football and understood it, it seems like a lot of those archaic perceptions and archaic viewpoints are held by the vocal, the set of people that are vocal in Russian football hold those sort of views, whether that's idiotic pundits, like Igorov and the others that we've called out, whether that's ex-players who have somehow managed to get their way into media just because they were average for a couple of years. And I do hope that it changes with time. But yeah, sorry to everybody listening as well for turning this into such a serious episode. But yeah, I mean, that's all I have to say.
What's really disappointing me is the reaction to Wilfried Zaha's actions. For those who don't know, Wilfried Zaha has spoke against kneeling of late, and at the weekend he actually refused to kneel. And I've seen this in Championat, in the Sun in England, the Times, and Rod Liddell, who's a horrific English commentator with regards to politics and race. They all kind of held up his argument and saying, see, this is why we've been saying kneeling is wrong all along. I've seen some Millwall fans who are outwardly in support of when they booed kneeling when they were back at the games in December in England, saying the same thing. Like, look, even he says that this is wrong, that Black Lives Matter is a fascist, Marxist organisation, that this should not be done. Now, that's even more infuriating. Wilfried Zaha is not refusing to kneel because he agrees with you. He's refusing to kneel because of people like you, because nothing's being done. He sees it as an empty gesture now that was just, yes, good at first, but, well, we're nearly a year on, and what's actually been done about it? In midweek, Glenn Kamara of Rangers was horrifically racially abused by Slavia Prague players, and Slavia Prague completely refused, and the authorities refused to even exist the fact that it happened. He's had to release a statement through his solicitors, a lawyer. This is why Zaha is sick of it and refuses to kneel, because there's nothing being done, because of the total opposite of articles like the one that you tweeted out, Hanu, of celebrating when players refuse to kneel. It's unfathomable how anybody could get that take and think that that's why Zaha is kneeling. He's doing the opposite. It's because he's so frustrated that it's becoming an empty gesture from his point of view, that yes, everyone kneels, but in reality, what's actually been done to stop racism in the last year, since the first time they kneeled since the George Floyd incident? It's, for him, he sees it as now pointless, not as the antithesis of that, as a way to, as because it was a Marxist organization. Like, shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
It's I don't know if we can. I think we've probably toiled this ground too far. But Richard, anything final to add on the kneeling debacle and Black Lives Matter and so on?
I think you guys have summed it all up. I think you've mentioned all the main points, and I'm in total agreement. I'll keep it short. I'm in total agreement with everything what you guys have just said there.
So if we do move on, this weekend, the RPL takes a backseat for the aforementioned international break, but the Finna L does in fact carry on. In lieu of this, we'll be covering more Finna L next week on the pod, and we're going to skip it today. And coming up on the pod, we do have some exciting guests too, including the voice of the RPL in English, a certain Alexei Yaroshevsky. Hanu, where can everyone find the Whatever This Is podcast, and how's the RFN YouTube channel coming along?
Yeah, you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube as well, where we put out like a little screen. And our podcast is typically, for if anyone hasn't heard it, it's a Russian football podcast, which is very casual. Like, we only discuss Russian football for about 20% of it, then just start discussing random things. And we're also trying to get a few guests on. But if you go to my Twitter, which is at H4NUU, you'll find it as a pinned tweet. Or if you just search Whatever This Is Russian football on Google or wherever, you'll find it. And yeah, I'd just like to say thanks for having me on again. And yeah, that's it.
And Richard, thanks for joining too. And we'll finish off there, Richard, with a little congratulations to Wigan finally finding a buyer for the club.
Yeah, indeed. It's been a torturous last 9 months or so. Thankfully the takeover has been agreed now. It's set to be approved by the authorities in the next few weeks, and just hopefully now we can survive in League One and onwards and upwards from there. Hopefully rebuild up in a nice, good, sustainable fashion. And but the most important thing is that it's been done now, and just it's a horrible experience these last 9 months what my club's had to go through, and I won't wish it on any club any worse. So thankfully the nightmare's almost over now. You can find me on Twitter at RichDPike89, at RichDPike89, and brace yourselves in the next couple of weeks for some good content on Heart of Football. We're going to start an official on this day series, which looks back at famous football matches, events, etc., from a certain day. And the beauty of these articles, they'll be published on the day that they took place in the past. So I'm hoping that this series, which I've pioneered for the site, will really get some good views, and you enjoy the content for it. So yeah, I'll just throw that in there. But yeah, absolutely delighted Wigan's been taken over. Fantastic news.
Yeah, brilliant. And for everyone, a little quick update on the website. We have now cleared the infected code. We were externally hacked, not quite sure how, to be quite honest, but the code's now cleared, and we are trying to work on getting the site all back together. I know from the external point of view, it does look all fine. We have managed to get it live again after I was only down for about a week. So from your point of view, I can understand that you go on the website and everything looks okay. But there is quite a lot of issues with the backups of the site, with the back end. We can't access the CMS. There's a lot that's basically been deleted and affected by the hack. So we're working on with our technical partners to get that back up as soon as possible. In terms of the podcast, we'll be back at a regular time next Thursday. Until then, this has been the RFN podcast. Goodbye for now.
Идет футбольный матч, летит над полем мяч. Веди его, беги, точнее его ударь. Но мяч берет ноги решительный вратарь. Не напрасно футбольное поле самых ловких и смелых влечет. Здесь нужны тренировка и воля, быстрота, увлечение, расчет.